comes to my children and it comes to my experience as a mother and my role in my family, is there anything better to invest my funds toward to the extent that I can? Is there anything more important? There's not a bag, not a trip, not a vehicle. There is nothing external in my life, in my world, that's more important than doing this work on me for my children. Guys, it's almost May, which means it's almost my 40th birthday. But probably more important and relevant to you is it's almost Mother's Day. So let's start with some announcements because you're going to blink and Mother's Day is going to be here. And I feel like every year that I've been in business, I always want to do something so important for Mother's Day. And it's like I blink, Mother's Day comes and goes. So this year we're doing things a little bit differently. I have some plans. I started planning this early April. So here's what we're going to do. And you're all invited, whether you're a mother or you support mothers or you come from a mother. My first announcement is I'm facilitating an experience to honor mothers for Mother's Day. It's called Motherhood Decoded. There's going to be an in-person option and a virtual option. So if you're local to me in Tampa, contact me, reach out to me to inquire about a ticket. This is an intimate in-person experience. So it's not just going to be publicly shared where the location is. You have to reach out to me to get the ticket. Friday, May 5th, 10 a.m. If you're not local to Tampa and you still want to participate, we have a virtual option. It's going to be May 11th. And there's a link in the show notes for you to purchase a virtual ticket. Now, what is Motherhood Decoded all about? Effectively, we're going to have a deep conversation about what it means to heal your lineage, to heal your mother wounds, what these look like when they show up in your life, why we want to heal them. And then I'm going to facilitate a guided healing session to help you heal your lineage, heal the line. So again, you don't have to be a mother to participate in this. All of us have mothers, and many of us have some form of mother wounding, even if it doesn't come from our mother, right? Sometimes it's passed down from older generations of the mother line. So this is what we're going to be doing. It's very deep. It's very nourishing. It's very me. And so it's something that I have been doing on myself for intentionally about 4 years now. And I'm finally getting the courage to share this in a bigger way publicly. I've done this with private clients. I've done this in private containers. This is the most public I've ever done this kind of thing. So I'm excited to start to share it with you. Okay. Announcement number 2, I'm turning 40. I'm turning 40 in early May. And if you'd like to gift me something, I am open to gifts anytime leading up to and for the whole month of May, but not spending money. The gift that I would request from you is if you've ever listened to a single episode on this show and have felt something, inspiration, felt like you learned something, you felt like you got a nudge or confirmation. If you ever enjoy an episode of mine, would you review the podcast and share it, please? That would be the most beautiful gift to me because this is my baby. This podcast, I was realizing the other day that this is so much more than a podcast. This show, it's like a portal, right? Like every week when I do solo casting and it's just me talking, these are micro trainings in personal development, in business development, in online business, in motherhood, in spirituality, and all of these are areas that you would associate with me. These are micro trainings. The podcast is the channel through which I'm getting it to you, right? So this is effectively a portal where you come and learn and receive codes and healing, because almost every episode is infused with healing as well. And so you are able to, if your system is open and available to healing, you're able to tune in and receive an energy healing transmission just by listening to the episode. So that's my gift request. Would you review me and share? And the way to share is screenshot it whenever you're listening. Take a screenshot or just go to it right now. You have it open on your phone if you're listening. Maybe if you're watching it on YouTube, you can do that too. But screenshot wherever you listen, share to your Instagram stories if you have Instagram, or to your Facebook. Tag me. It makes my friggin' day. And that would be the most beautiful gift for my 40th birthday, entering a new decade. All right. Another announcement. We'll make it quick. The content course that I've been teaching, you've been hearing me talk about it throughout the month, different micro trainings when it comes to content. I have been training on the podcast, the kinds of things I could be talking about in the content course. Those have been free though. In the course, we're wrapping up as we near the end of April. And if you want to catch replay, there's two different ways you can do that right now. You can join the Evolutionary Business School, which I've told you in the past is a great way to come in and watch all of my classes live, get access to the portal, but then also you get small group coaching. Now, if you are like, that's not necessarily in alignment with me right now, maybe I don't need that small group coaching, maybe I'm more of a self-study individual and I prefer replays, or quite frankly, maybe financially, it would make more sense for you right now to do something that's a little bit lower of an investment. I have opened the portal. I don't even know that I've shared it with you on the podcast because it was such a quick decision. This came to me early April. I decided to make the portal an all access pass option. So what that means is you can go into and join only the portal, no group coaching, no community as it is in the membership. This is strictly a portal all access pass. It starts at $22 a month, or you can pay for the year and get a month for free effectively. So you're paying 11 months, you get 12, and you can access all of my on-demand business development / personal development courses as often as you want to watch them while you are active with your all access pass. I know it sounds ridiculous. When it came to me, I came out of meditation one morning and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make this $22 a month. Are you freaking kidding me? So it's starting at $22 a month when you join in April. That is the thing. That is the offer. You can catch the content replay. There's a link in the show notes with all the courses that are included. So if you want to go check it out, feel free to do that. It is loads of material. Yes, if you join in April, $22 a month. If you have any questions, reach out. The content course will be uploaded to the portal after it's complete. So it'll be loaded in the portal sometime in May, but until then, there's still a ton of recent coursework and some of my classics available to you. Okay. Final announcement, given that Mother's Day is approaching, given that I have shifted and rebranded the podcast a bit to expand the kind of things we're talking about, this month we're shifting a little bit to more interviews with various mothers of the world, business owners of the world, women who, even if they aren't in your particular industry, are in some respect like very like-minded with me. So whether they are a business owner, entrepreneur, a mother, or work with mothers, work in the metaphysical world, or do some type of spiritual work or energy healing modalities, I'm really excited to bring you a collection of interviews this month highlighting these various mothers and the work that they're doing with mothers. So that's kind of the shift that you'll see over the next month or so, is more interviews to widen the scope and to really go deeper and honor motherhood. I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, reach out. Oh, final announcement is I have private support options. I do have a spot available for full private mentorship. You'll have to reach out to me so we can talk and see if it's a good fit. I also have a couple spots available for private light mentorship. So if you want something that's a little bit lighter and you don't necessarily need to talk to me every day, that could be a great option for you too. Both of those, we have the opportunity to go very deep and do intensive healing work. There's a lot of energy healing available to you in both of those options. Ongoing support as you integrate and as you move through your life, having done this energy work. With a recent client that I worked with last month, we also did some energy work on her daughter. And so that's something that's available to you when we're working in that private capacity as well. Types of things that we work on when it comes to private mentorship are anything from business mentorship, motherhood mentorship, loving the shit out of yourself mentorship, and learning how to be in this incredible, beautiful, loving relationship with yourself and how to do the work on yourself to change your world, to change your reality, to change how you show up in your marriage, change how you show up as a mother, how you show up in your relationships with your friends or with your clients. So this is very deep work that I prefer to do on a one-on-one basis, and I have space. So again, reach out to me if you'd like to talk about what that looks like. All right, without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Heads up, I am going to be sharing this and navigating this really carefully because it's tricky for me to share my most profound life transformation while also honoring and protecting my children's privacy and allowing their story to be theirs to tell. Now, clearly I share certain things about the kids, but I do have like this super mama bear protective side that I don't want everyone in the world to know everything that's going on with them, right? So I tend to share things that are like really light and not necessarily anything that they would feel embarrassed or ashamed of, or like what they would grow up and say like, oh, mom, why did you share that kind of thing? So this is difficult. It's quite the conundrum. It's difficult for me to navigate because it's also the area of my life where I've experienced the most transformation and become the version of myself as a mother I never thought was possible, or I didn't even think of, I didn't even know existed. And so it's really tricky to navigate this. So I'm going to do my best. So bear with me through this episode as I try to let you feel the frequency that I'm on in motherhood and in healing, while also honoring my kids and their privacy and their stories. Let's go. So the greatest gift I could ever and have ever given my children is working on myself and investing in myself. I think that, and I said this in a previous episode, I think that we were led to believe that as parents, we come here and we have these children and they come here to be molded, that we're supposed to like mold our children and guide them, which I think we're guiding, yes, but like molding them into something, I don't think that's where we are anymore. I don't think that's where we're going as conscious parents. And many of you are who hang out with me and listen to me. I just don't think that's the case. And so there's been a lot of deconditioning of what I brought into motherhood and what I brought into parenthood about our roles and the kinds of relationships that we can build with our children and how we navigate being their guides, right? Each of them so different, and how we parent them and guide them each differently according to their design and who they are as individuals, right? So again, the biggest gift is not necessarily working on the children and trying to shape them or investing in tutoring or investing in, any of these external things, right? None of those things are bad, but the biggest gift has been working on me. And we can find that similarity in any relationship. You want a better friendship with your friends? Work on yourself. You want a better marriage? Work on yourself. You want a better relationship with your clients? Work on yourself. You want a better relationship with your children? Work on yourself. And it's interesting because years ago, I thought I was perfectly fine. And I mean, generally, I was perfectly fine. I was where I was at. And then, as you may have heard on the show before, I had two really profound events in my life in 1 year that were like really in the span of like 4 months, that were catalysts that changed the trajectory of my life. And there have been different things like that here and there, but those two were probably the biggest ever, right? And so that was one when my 21-year-old brother passed. He was in a tragic motorcycle accident in 2016, and I was like 7 months pregnant with my second. I was preparing for a VBAC, and that was one. And then a few months later, having that first VBAC. So it was me stretching my capacity to hold grief, my capacity to hold this new stepping into my power as a woman and as a mother, and reclaiming my power through having a VBAC. It was really, I didn't have the language for this yet, and I do now. And at the time, I knew that I needed support. I knew that, especially when my brother passed, when I got back from his funeral, so he had a funeral in Florida, I was living in Chicago. When I got back to Chicago, I started going through the list immediately of local therapists. Found a therapist in Chicago, a couple miles from the house. She was super woo. And when I walked into her office, it was like, she had all of these, it smelled like essential oils and incense. And she had like pictures of the chakra system and just like crystals. And at the time, I really didn't know what any of that was. I just knew she was a little bit hippie-ish, right? She dressed really hippie-ish, and I connected with her. I vibed with it. I was like, yeah, I dig it. I like this. She actually reminded me of my mom in a lot of ways, and like the whole vibe, right? And at the time, I was open. And when I say open, I was like open to woo, open to spirituality. I don't have strong organized religion style beliefs. And I was really vulnerable and really desperate and I wanted something to believe in. And I was really looking for something because I believe in God and everything, but I was really looking I needed support. I wanted to feel held. And that's what I got with her. She said words to me that I had never heard before. And I was so young in terms of like my spirituality and my understanding of everything, that even the word like present, I didn't understand what she meant. She said, are they present with you? And I'm like, yeah, physically, like they're present, I'm here. she meant, are they present, right? And many of you listening, you know what this is, right? At the time, I didn't. And this was just 7 years ago. So I say all that to say she was one of the people who first held me through me learning how to have the capacity to hold this duality of grief and stepping into and reclaiming reclamation of my power. So I saw her for like a year. And my experience with her, I only stopped working with her and seeing her because I moved. And so I used to take my newborn once I had the baby. So I was like 7 months pregnant when I started seeing her. And then after I had the baby, I would go back to her office once a week and bring the baby and nurse. And, when the baby was big enough, I'd bring her a little blanket and lay her down in the office so I could have support. And it was a beautiful thing. And it really was this like peek through the curtain type experience to see what's available in terms of beliefs and spirituality. At the same time, I started picking up books like Gabrielle Bernstein, and I started to explore metaphysics and spirituality. And I felt for the first time in my life, like a very strong correctness in my belief system. It was a remembering. And fast forward a few years. So just taking you on the journey of like, how did I get into energy healing and this big gift to myself and to my children, right? So fast forward a little bit to 2019, just a few years, I was working on building my business, which was going incredibly well, and continuing to raise these little babies. I'd had another baby, so now I was a mother of three, and I had three very young children. In 2019, they were like all ages 5 and under. Yeah, 5, 6 and under. And that next phase of motherhood really hit me like a bag of bricks. My youngest was like less than a year old. And I really, even though I was already in the doula world at the time, I took my doula training in 2018. I still felt like, why do I feel postpartum and like motherhood feels so heavy after like a year? And the truth is, postpartum doesn't end after 12 weeks or after 6 months, even. Like it can take much longer. And there are just different levels of that emotional experience over time. And so here I was with 3 kids. The littlest one was about a year out, and I just felt so lost. I had developed a belief system, and I was tuning into my spirituality here and there and such, but like in terms of parenting and in terms of motherhood, felt like I like hit a brick wall. The motherhood narrative on the streets of what it's supposed to be like just didn't feel like it resonated. The whole like mommy needs more wine, it didn't feel good in my body anymore. The martyr mother, the whole like motherhood is so hard and that was it, didn't resonate. That persona no longer resonated. And I felt like this can't be it. It can't just be this martyrdom feeling. And what I had learned about how to be a parent didn't resonate anymore. And it's not to judge my parents or the role models I had in the parenting dynamic. It was partly that they didn't have the tools that we have now. And it's one of those things like, you don't know what you don't know. And I feel like for my parents, a lot of it was like, you don't know what you don't know. They didn't have the tools, and things like going to a therapist was a stigma. And like, they didn't have access to the internet at that time to, if they wanted to get a therapist, right? I also believe that the consciousness of the parents of the 80s, very different than the consciousness of the parents today. And so again, like this isn't to throw shade or judge them. This is just saying like, okay, what I learned, that doesn't feel correct. And a lot of the knee-jerk reactions about, and not just coming from my parents, but what I learned from society about parenting didn't feel correct. That knee-jerk reaction of like, okay, this is what I've been conditioned to do, so I do this. It didn't feel right in my body. And I just thought, I don't know what else to do. I read all of these books, all of these parenting books. Some of them were still here. Some of them were great conscious parenting books, and they're lovely, but nothing really felt like it was landing. And I felt lonely. It felt very isolating to be like, does anybody get this? Is anybody else feeling this? Because everyone around me seemed to buy into, and again, not to judge, but like collectively, mothers are buying into this old story of like, mommy needs more wine, mommy needs more wine, mommy needs a drink, mommy's exhausted and run down, and that's how it's supposed to be. And like, if you're in that space, I have a lot of compassion for you and for us, because I was in that space too. And there came a point though, where it felt like a waking up of like, F this, like, I don't like this. I don't want to buy this anymore. So what do I do? right? And I found that the way I was showing up in parenthood, and particularly the relationships that I was building with my children, it just wasn't exactly what I wanted. It really wasn't what I desired. And it wasn't what I knew was possible. I felt in my heart that something else was possible for us. I just didn't know what was going to be the bridge to get me there and to get us there. So I discovered energy work, and a dear friend and a mentor of mine introduced me to a modality and trained me with a modality that I now use called expansion principle healing technology. It's an energy healing modality. And initially, it was a big investment to me. And I thought, okay, how do I justify this? And to be completely honest with you, this was 2019, May of 2019. I had no idea what she was talking about. I love her dearly, but when she was saying energy healing and it does this and it does that, and I'm like, I don't know what the F you're saying, but it sounds really good. It feels good. I'm in. And the way that I justified the investment, because I thought, am I really investing in this thing that I don't know what it is? At the time, I was in a space where I felt like I needed to justify things to make the decision. Today, I do things a little bit differently when I make decisions. But at the time, I felt like, how do I justify making this investment and doing this thing that's so outside of the box and felt so imposter to step into? I felt like when it comes to my children and it comes to my experience as a mother and my role in my family, is there anything better to invest my funds toward to the extent that I can? Is there anything more important? There's not a bag, not a trip, not a vehicle. There is nothing external in my life, in my world, that's more important than doing this work on me for my children. And I felt like if it's something that can help my children for the rest of their lives, which I knew that it would, why would I not do this if I can make it happen financially? So let me tell you a little bit about EP. So expansion principle technology, healing technology, and energy healing modality. I'm going to refer to it as EP, expansion principle. So I started to learn about EP and I became attuned to EP. And again, initially, my only plan to use EP and energy healing was on my children and on myself. I wanted to learn how to heal myself and how to heal my children. EP is an energy healing modality. If you're familiar with Reiki, Reiki is energy healing. It's not the same as Reiki. It is different. It's a different modality. EP heals. It's a very gentle energy that heals our DNA, information in our DNA, to the origin of an experience or a trauma. I'll explain with examples because I think that that's really helpful, especially if you're newer to energy healing. So the difference with EP is that it heals, one of the differences is that it heals to the origin, meaning, let me back up for a second and explain that I believe something I've learned from my mentor, something I've read in a Sana, I forget her full name, Sana something book, The Power of, I owe you the name of the book, is that we have an energetic, we have soup, we have a spiritual soup in our DNA, and that our DNA includes information from our soul's current life experience. So from when we were babies until now, all the things that have occurred in our life is coded in our DNA, and that it includes information coding from past lives. So past lives meaning our soul's different experiences in different bodies, and information from our lineage. So I have DNA information from my grandparents, from their grandparents, all the way back in the line. So when EP heals to the origin, let's say there was an experience that my soul experienced several lives ago, it goes all the way back and heals at that point and forward. The same in the line in my lineage. So it heals all the way back and forward. So what that means, something that I was talking to my mentor about recently, is that my mom, my dad have been experiencing energy healing, like secondhand healing was the phrase that popped into my head when I was trying to visualize this. I do good with examples and simplification and trying to anchor it in. They're getting secondhand healing. I'm not necessarily doing energy healing work specifically on them all the time, but then when I do it on me and when it runs through their lineage, they're effectively subconsciously getting secondhand healing. It's that concept of if you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, people used to smoke in restaurants. You walked into a restaurant to the hostess stand and they would say smoking or non-smoking. Yeah, for real. And people used to smoke on airplanes. I remember being 13 and flying back from Israel, and there was a smoking section in the back. People were smoking in the back of the airplane. So back in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of secondhand smoke. Kind of that concept, except for it's energy healing. So my parents have been experiencing this. And I know that more recently with my father, I shared on my social media recently that I did an expansion principle process on my dad with his permission, an intentional energy healing experience on my father with his permission, but he wasn't open to it until very recently. And I really believe that part of it is because he's been receiving that secondhand, his system has been receiving secondhand healing for a few years now. And remember, I said I first started using it only on my children. The goal was only for me and the kids. Eventually, I started to branch out, and because I saw results. I saw such profound changes in the way that I engage with my children, the way that I navigate and show up as their mother, the relationship I have, honestly, that I have built with my son is directly related to the healing work I've done on us, both of us. I want to give you an example. Again, I'm not going to share the kids' examples because I'm not going to do that, but I'll give you an example from me because I'm more comfortable sharing my own stuff, or at least pieces of it. So having this kind of conversation publicly is not something I would have been comfortable doing a while back. I actually felt like I was hiding the fact that I was doing energy healing work for a very long time because it didn't feel safe to talk about. I felt like people would judge or make fun of me or all kinds of things my brain was telling me, right? One of the things that came up for me when I was doing a healing session on myself, and actually there was something I was doing on myself, but also with a mentor. We used EP, I'll say it that way, a healing session where we were using EP on me. And I should also say that when you use EP for healing, you're not like snap your fingers, you do all your healing and you're ready to go and you're done and you're healed in a day. It's slowly, one piece, one layer, whatever's priority that needs to be shifted for you to move forward and expand in your life at that moment, right? So one day, what came up during a session for me was one of my great grandmothers on my father's side, on my lineage on my father's side. So my dad's lineage, right, is Eastern European. So he's Israeli. His mother, my grandmother, she was originally from Hungary, and she moved to Israel during World War II to avoid the Germans and the Nazis, more specifically, of course. And so their people came from that part of the world. I want to say it was 7 generations back. One of my grandmothers faced some pretty serious consequences of using her magic. And if you're listening, not watching me on video for this part, I'm putting this in quotes. Her magic, right? She was into herbal healings, so using herbs to heal. And another one was using tea divination. So if you've ever heard of this is common in the Middle East too. I've seen it with espressos and Turkish coffees, where at the end of drinking your tea, at the end of having a coffee, you can do this process where you swirl it or whatever and flip the cup over, and whatever the tea residue or the coffee residue leaves behind, people will read it. So it's a tool for accessing divine information, maybe messages from God, right? So tarot cards, oracle cards are a tool. Sometimes crystals in certain shapes and things like that are tools for accessing divinity. So tea leaves is a source of accessing divinity. And so they both got in serious trouble. I don't need to go into all the details, but they both faced some pretty serious consequences. And as a result, I do believe that I was carrying that trauma, that information in my body, and it wasn't helping me to move forward. So it may have been holding me back from sharing things like this right now with you because I didn't feel safe, right? And so going through that healing and using EP to help me clear that and help me heal that has been one of the things that's helped me to unlock and feel safe sharing more of these things, because we're in 2023. I'm not going to necessarily get ostracized and forced to burn all of my belongings if I don't, ostracized from and ousted from the community, if I don't stop talking about my witchery, or whatever you want to call it. So that was the example that I feel comfortable sharing with you. But I can say that there are ways that I'm using EP all the time now on a daily basis on myself, on my kids, on my father. I'm planning to use it with my mom because she's asked me to recently. I use it with my clients. I use it with my friends and their children. It's a really gentle, beautiful thing. And most of them I should also mention they don't have to be present for this, right? So this isn't something that you have to be sitting with me and me have my hands on you. I do my kids' stuff mostly when they're asleep. The only time I physically put my hands on them to do it is when they're really physically going through a hard time. Perhaps they're running a fever or they're sick, and I want to use EP to help soothe and settle their system. There's just so many ways that I've used this, but the most profound shift for me has been in how I feel as a mother and the relationships. And really, this is a forever thing that's changing the trajectory of my children's lives. The things that we're healing for them is creating possibilities, new timelines for them to get to experience as people in this world, because we're healing their DNA. If you still are hanging with me at the end of this conversation, I love you. Thank you for hanging with me. I know this conversation isn't for everybody, and there are moments where it feels very vulnerable to talk about this stuff publicly because, there's some people that just aren't ready for that, but I don't do it for those people. And I would encourage you to think about that when you go out into the world and talk publicly on social media, if that's something that you do, or podcast or blog or whatever it is, and talk to the people who need to hear it. If you'd like to talk more about how this has been helpful for my children, shoot me a DM on Instagram if we have a relationship and I know you, or whatever. If I feel we can talk more about what it actually looks like and what you might be seeing in your kids that you feel like something isn't clicking, something that society is telling you something about your child based on the way that they're behaving or their behavior. The thing is, sometimes society gets it wrong. Sometimes the labels and the stories that society is telling us about our kids are not accurate. They may have been accurate in the 80s or the 90s, but where we are today, we have access to more tools, resources. Example, EP. We're conscious. We're approaching this from a very different place, from a very conscious place. And if you know in your heart that what you're hearing about your child is not correct, is not accurate, there may be something else there that's impacting your child's ability to feel, looking for the right word here, it's impacting your child's ability to show up in the world as their most expressed self. There may be information, experiences, sometimes trauma in their DNA that they don't consciously remember because it could have been something 3 generations back. It could have been something 10 lifetimes ago that could be impacting their ability to express themselves in their own correctness today. And so one of the most beautiful gifts you can give them is allowing them to express themselves and clearing the stuff that's making it tricky for them to do that. I'm going to give you another visual because I really like this one. We live in Florida. Our windows tend to get a lot of stuff from the humidity and the moisture or whatever. So the windows tend to get really dirty over time. I guess that happens anywhere, right? It's really hard to see through the window if it's incredibly dirty and there's a lot of buildup and it's, somebody who's truly neglected their windows, you can't really see very well through it. EP energy to me sometimes feels like we're cleaning the window and then we can see clearly through the window. We are clearing the debris. We're clearing the old information and the debris that's in our DNA that's not helping us see clearly, i.e. express ourselves the way that we came into this body in this lifetime to do. Having said all of that, reach out to me if you'd like to talk about what that looks like. There's different ways you can experience it. If you'd like a taste of what it feels like and the experience of receiving an energy healing transmission, my Motherhood Decoded event is coming up. That's a great example. We're going to be healing the line. And that's what I mean by healing the line. You don't have to be a mother to come. We all have a line. We all have information in our DNA that when we heal parts of it ongoing will help us to feel more expressed in this life. There's a virtual event on May 11th. If you're in person, I have one on May 5th. And if you prefer something more private, we can do that too. DM me on Instagram, send me an email. You know where to find me. Let's talk about what that looks like. And I can explain more examples if it's helpful and let me know what your experience is. We'll see how I can help. All right, friends, that felt vulnerable and important. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know if it resonated. It feels really good to hear from people, especially on these really personal episodes, that it landed and that it resonated. So I look forward to hearing from you. Have a great week. Bye. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day and listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found value in what I'm sharing here. And if you did, can you do me a little favor and go and rate and review this episode? I will share a link in the show notes so that it's really easy to rate and review this podcast. It would mean a lot to me, as this is truly a passion project. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you next week.